right. Hello and welcome to Powered by Intuition. This is a weekly live where I kind of intuit what is happening with current events or things that just kind of come up into my periphery of attention. And I also come through with an intention to support you in this day and age. And as I do this, I am of the belief that when you see this, whenever this comes to you, whenever you are viewing this, there will always be something that is specifically for you in this episode when it comes up for you. There is always a learning from these episodes that is absolutely timeless and addresses the aspects of the human condition. So wherever you are, whatever time you're watching this, whenever you're watching this, wherever, whatever time of day, like there will always be something that is here to support you. And, my intention is that it is at the appropriate moment that you need it, whether current events or not. So, this episode is about that one thing that you need right now to help you get through the cesspool of things that are happening at the moment. And that one thing is laughter. Now, there's a preponderance of people that like to really indulge in the doom and gloom. It's like, well, I saw on TikTok that all this chaos is happening. This is bad. How dare I laugh? Kind of kicking off a shame cycle, right? And shame does not support. It is not going to help you. It is actually going to hurt and hinder and prevent you from really getting through this. Because if you're not filling your cup as you're dealing with these situations, being inundated online from all the doom and gloom that is just constantly being beamed at you, you will not make it. And there's something that came to my attention this week through someone else or through discussions where there was a group of people and all of a sudden they just kind of turncoated, and it's not like they're trolls. It's not like they're, people put in the space to kind of like suddenly, flip-flop from their directives, from what they've been taught, from how they've been supported. And as this discussion went on with this person who was privy to that behavior, it came very apparent to me that these individuals are dealing with PTSD. Now, it's not like the overt PTSD that everybody's dealing with, but it's like PTSD-like symptoms, right? I'm not a therapist. I can't diagnose them. I'm not in the situation, but I'm like, that does sound a little bit like PTSD-esque behavior. And there's PTSD, like there's different grades of it, right? Even if therapy hasn't really capitalized on temporary windows, they pretty much are there to diagnose the very overt symptoms that prevents a person from living their lives. But there are stages and there are steps that get us into that space and that phase and that way of being, or that way of coping or not coping. And when you start looking at those steps and paying attention to those minutiae of like, well, why would these people suddenly begin freaking out about this thing and, getting very agitated, for lack of a better word, it harkens on those dynamics, on fear, on trauma, on being traumatized, which there is a talk that I do, and most of my talks when I'm doing public speaking are around fear. And so that's why I know so much about it. I grew up in a haunted household. It was terrifying. It's like a home invasion. Whenever you see these things happen, it's scary, right? So there, because of that, like I have certain behaviors that are hardwired into me now. Like, I will not have a mirror in the bedroom. No, thank you. And things of that nature. So when it came to those behaviors, I was like, yeah, they're having a trauma response. They're either dealing with anxiety or like, PTSD-esque symptoms where they cannot process out of this state. And so they're locking in on this like fear, doom and gloom, and designating people in these little microcosm boxes just so they can like process and get through these situations. And that is a very adverse way of dealing with these situations where you're going to be harming the wrong people. As if you're on the clock app, I did a video recently about that, where, someone is going after the allies and, doing this grandiose thing of they abandoned this individual and everybody's been abandoned by them. And it's like, no, 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 no. You just haven't pursued the information necessary. And that says a lot about that individual who is willing to make these statements. Trust me, I definitely had my abandonment issues. That's what kicked off my own bouts of PTSD, which is kind of, embarrassing because that stuff popped off in front of like some major celebrities. Well, celebrities, I'd call them celebrities. But yeah, it's kind of funny how that happens. But, it's like I've been there, done that. And if I can help you get through that without burning bridges that are necessary for this day and age, because really, when you look at this scenario, you're like, well, what do you want? What do you want in the world right now? What do you want to create? And then the second question is, how are you going to create that attacking your allies? And then the next question is, how are you going to create that being in such a low space that you cannot tell the difference between an ally and an enemy, where you cannot get through these situations without completely crashing out? And this just kind of harkened back to a theme that's been coming up for me this week within certain situations where it's just like so over the top, whether it's conspiracy, whether it's a person at a big event that loves to talk and ramble on and make an ass of themselves, or whether it's like the trolls and bots that are like saying just the stupidest responses. It brought up what I need to share out there, which is you need to take time to laugh. And it's okay to laugh. You don't need to feel shame or guilt because, well, this person across the country got harmed, right? You still need to take time to diffuse that energy. Laughter is very powerful. I've had the uh, ability to hang out, with a lot of comedians, major Emmy award-winning comedian who owns Laughter Heals, Craig Shoemaker. And I know that his comedy is probably very offensive in this day and age, but he still has those facts, right? Like when you get to a spot of being able to navigate your nervous system and being able to not take things, being able to have your boundaries and not take things and attach them to you, and then seeing what's working, what's not working, you can kind of navigate things better. You can kind of handle your shit, for lack of a better word, and you can figure things out in a way that benefits you and can benefit humanity and your purpose. And, you don't get so offended by things because you realize there is a distinction between you and them, and they are allowed to be human beings as well. Which brings me on to another subject that came up in that video that I did, where the individual is still performing fascism, yet is professing to be against fascism. So if you are in a self-righteous, it's my way or the highway, they're not doing what they should be doing, even though that individual doesn't really know what their job is, and obviously within saying those statements has not paid attention to how the individuals are performing, what they're up against, what their parameters are, what they're willing to do so that they don't get unalived or harmed or their family harmed. You don't know what sort of threats they've got. You don't know what's going on in their situation, period. Like, no insight to say those statements. And that is an aspect of fascism where you go, my way is the best way, my way or the highway. You have to do this, or else you're not good enough, or else you've abandoned me, or else you X, Y, and Z. And, you're attacking them, right? That's still an aspect of fascism. That's what it's about. If you think you're the best God's gift to earth and everybody else is just a big failure because they're not doing what you think they should be doing, even though you have no clue what they really should be doing or what they're capable of doing or what their strengths are and how those different strengths can play within a spectrum of strategies, you're a fascist. It doesn't matter what side you're on. And so when you don't have your goals in mind, when you get so lost in the BS or in your own BS or in your fear stories or in, they shoulda, woulda, coulda, rather than what I can do, you're lost. Like, you've lost the plot. And that's why laughter is important, because laughter diffuses the situation. It makes things lighter. So with that individual who I am not going to name that individual on here. Okay, period. Not doing that. But when it comes to that individual speech, like, I just started laughing when he complimented a different person in the back of the room. And I'm like, that's hilarious. That is so funny. This person, yeah, like, it's just absolutely hilarious. And maybe not in the moment for some people. Maybe it's really embarrassing, which, I mean, it is. When you deal with embarrassment, if you can't laugh it off, that's a problem. That's a failure within your ability to process information and move on. Let me say that again. If you cannot handle embarrassment, process that situation, laugh at it, and move on, that is a problem. That means you got work to do. That means you got to work on your nervous system. That means you got to work on some healing. Because if you're not able to recover from a minor setback, from a slip and fall, and laugh at yourself, that's indicative of some stuff going on that needs to be addressed. That is within your awareness that you're not as resilient as you can be. Resilience is the ability to bounce back and not let it stick with you, not sticking it on you. And what I mean, it's like, if you've seen that movie Labyrinth with the old woman puppet character that just like has the big like heaping pile of junk and then tries to stick it on the main character, and she starts getting piled on with all of her junk, all of her childhood stuff that she's trying to hold on to as she segues into a teenager and then a young adult. It's like that. You're carrying around this load, this junk, rather than being like, all right, well, let's pick it up, look at it, and we're done with it. It's meaningless. Right? Wow, my ego got bruised. Okay, whatever. Move on. There are more pressing things to deal with in that situation. Laugh at it to dispel that energy. Laughter is like a shaman's drumbeat. It cuts through the atmosphere. Another aspect of laughter is it really helps to diminish pain. And let me explain that. As a kid, having an older sibling that was not my friend, that is an interesting situation because I've had the wind knocked out of me twice. Like, literally, there is a way to punch you where it's like the diaphragm, and I've had the wind knocked out of me twice. Now, the first time, whew, that hurt. That hurt. The second time I was laughing and I recovered almost immediately because of that. There is power behind laughter. There is power behind knowing what to take seriously and what not to take seriously, and having that discernment and having that ability to recover and to be resilient. There is power in that. There is power in being able to laugh. And that's what I am cultivating this week. And I hope that you begin to pay attention to, have I laughed this week? Have I laughed today? It takes the time to see things a little differently. See things that aren't pressing, that aren't serious, a little lighter. And yeah, maybe it's a bit of dark humor, but it's going to serve and support you in dark times. Okay? Remember to laugh. Laughter is powerful. Laughter is healing. Okay? Let me see what else I wanted to cover on this. If you need help to get out of your funk, to get out of feeling any sort of shame around being safe, any shame around being able to have laughter, then there's the Resilience Journal. Okay? That is a great thing to that is a great way to be able to process things quickly, to recover quickly. I think I was talking about the Resilience Journal, but that's a way to start getting you into a lighter space so that you're not locked into this doom and gloom, everything spiraling mindset. Like, you can regain yourself, you can regain control over yourself, over what you are able to take on, which is what I talked about last week. And then, set these appropriate boundaries. But laughter is not optional. Find time, find space to laugh. It is okay to have laughter about the appropriate things, right? So, another example about that, obviously at the same event that the individual was kind of just like spouting off nonsense and then being very hilarious about it, there was a comment on a post that I saw where someone was like, yeah, this event is for leaders, not governors. And I just lost it because, sir, governors are leaders. So, and yeah, of course, that person is, designed to rage bait. And it's hilarious. That was a hilarious statement. It's like, wow, you really have no idea what you're talking about. And that came across so funny. Be able to laugh. There's another thing about a figure who unfortunately, passed recently at a very interesting event in a very interesting way. And, someone was like, oh yeah, he likes to say he's a time traveler. And so, that I found that conspiracy theory to be very funny because it segues to like that movie Idiocracy. And so that was absolutely hilarious. And that just also, it's like, okay, it's a dark humor aspect, but it's also allowing that humor to come through, right? Allow yourself to laugh. It is that diffusing of energy. It creates light in your space. It's that snap that, if you have ever done shamanic drumming, call and response drumming, those sorts of things, or drumming for like a spiritual empowerment reason, laughter is that. It is that ability to like cut through energy and to direct your energy in a space in a way that is healing and clearing. So let me see. All right. Yes, I know. All right. Here's the thing. They want you afraid. They want you scared. There are people out there that want you to be in a fear state because it creates division. That's what I started with, having PTSD like light symptoms or expressions of anxiety, which kind of like for me personally going through anxiety, I will snap at people. Like it's not pleasant. So that's why I have to ground myself. I get to figure out my things so that I can A, not make things worse on myself, and B, be present for others in a way that isn't antagonistic or hostile. So, you know, um, there are people that want you afraid. It's by the fear spew is by design. It's by design because a lot of people don't have the self-control to pull themselves away from it. A lot of people don't even know that they're lost in it or locked in it or even dealing with traumatization from it. And, that's once again, that's why I center a lot of my public speaking around fear so that people can be able to recognize it and be able to get themselves out of it very quickly. And you can check those out on my, at least one video out on my YouTube. I'll have to put up other ones relatively soon. But you got to reorient your mind. You got to have that self-control and you got to be able to laugh. Start with once a week. Like find some funny videos that make you laugh and start laughter. But they really want you to stay afraid. That helps their metrics. That keeps you glued into the platforms. That is an addiction. It literally is. It's part of the addiction factors. I go into that on a talk that is up on my YouTube as well. It's ultimately how they can really do a number and how they're getting away with things. And it's not anybody. A lot of people like to place blame on things, but if you don't have self-control and you're not working to develop self-control and work yourself out of that, you got to handle your stuff first before you start pointing fingers at everybody else. You got to know that you can only control yourself and your responses to things. A lot of people want to control everybody else. You need to start with controlling yourself. If you can't control yourself, how are you ever going to have someone else support or help you out? How are you ever going to change someone else's heart or mind if you can't even have the self-control to change your own? Start with yourself and what you're responsible for first. Okay? Because the fear spew is by design, and if you fall into it, you're just going to get lost. And a lot of people are getting lost. So, yes, the resilience journal is out there. Whether you get it or not, challenge yourself to find something to laugh about this week. Okay? So, it's a short one today. But that's the main gist of it, is like there's so much fear spew that is amped up to create division, to create addiction, to create you feeling lost and powerless. And you got to reclaim your power, your sovereignty. And it starts with self-control. And if you need to kick into that, you need to start with laughter, because that'll get you right into reorienting yourself. That'll kick you out of lizard brain. Even if you start with like a fake laughter, that will kick you into laughter. That is one of the mechanisms that is very contagious. It's one of the emotional contagions. Laughter is. And smiling, right? So let's put out more helpful, more lighter, more beneficial things in the world to shift this tide of the doom, gloom, darkness, despair we got to start working on ourselves and what we can control and making light in the world and start making ourselves lighter so that we can keep moving forward. Because when I look at it, there's people that have been in conflict heavy areas. I have a connection, another comedian who, grew up in a war-torn area, and they are the nicest and most loving, sweetest person. And, when I reflect, I'm like, how did you get through that? If you meet a person from Cambodia, it's like, how did they get through their situations? But they're like so light. They're not burdened by the past because they know that there is still life. There is still life to live. So I hope that you are taking in the information. I'm seeing a lot of people just bounce through, and all I can say is that it's going to be an upward battle. And I hope that you are willing and able to step up and get through it. That's all I can say. And so once again, there is the Resilience Journal available. For those who are viewing on YouTube or any other platform, should be in the comments below. For those on TikTok, you can find it in my profile. And I just want to wish you all a good night. Things may or may not get better, but as long as there's a tomorrow, you can do one thing each day to make your life lighter amidst so much chaos going on. All right. Be well. Thank you for joining. And thank you for listening.